guess I don't need
to
him. I'm
go
inside.
live separately, so I won't be available for 2 or 3 minutes while I get this live on Facebook thing going. You should keep talking, but I'm just going to be in the background here.
Yeah, Mr. Producer, the key to a successful presentation is to start with a bang, not you just chatting about idle stuff. So let's start again. Hey, good morning, Professor Tootle. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fantastic. Thanks.
All right, I'm glad you're back. I thought we were gonna have to cancel the show because you were out motorcycling on the Pacific Coast Highway or other places.
This was a better alternative, it turned out. So,
Did you get into Canada?
no, I just turned around because, like I was telling the boys before the mics were heated up, it's going to be 106 today. And
Ooh,
when I was thinking about maybe doing the show from the road on the way back and then hitting my hometown this afternoon, it was no.
yeah,
Uh,
that's
so
not
I
gonna be fun.
I decided to go big, and I just turned around and rode home almost 1,000 miles, 14 hours on the bike.
Oh my God, isn't that bad for your back or your butt or something?
It's bad for everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but now I can say I've done it.
Well, nice, I guess, but I'm not sure that's a feather in your cap. Okay,
It's
Professor.
not official though,
Last.
because the Iron Butt Association requires you to document you have to take pictures of your odometer with gas station receipts. And
Okay,
as I did not do that, I don't want to claim that I actually did an official Iron Butt. So it's only unofficial.
but it's like 1,000 miles in a day or something.
Yeah, 1,000 miles in a 24-hour period, and I did 1,000 miles in under 14 hours.
Wow, that's crazy. That just actually seems too tough for me. Okay, so for viewers, I know I don't look like it, but I'm a runner again, but I'm way overweight, and I just got done with my run like 3 minutes ago. So forgive me for not being fully prepared. I did put on a nice T-shirt for you today, and I see you've got a nice T-shirt on today. Everybody's got a nice T-shirt on today. Okay, cool. So we're ready, Professor.
Yes.
Before we get into the topic at hand, and it's a fairly serious topic, and I'm just going to try to make sure that you're just not a bummer today. Oh my God, you could be a bummer. If you're a bummer today, I'm not going to let you be a bummer. But
Okay.
before we get to that, last Friday was the big, beautiful bill, which I hate calling a piece of legislation something like that. I know marketing is the deal and all that, but we didn't really talk about anything important, good or bad in the bill. Do we have to talk about that? Is there anything worthy historically? It's the most historic bill in the history of the United States, Professor. Or is it? I mean, do we need to talk about it or should we just go to the topic at hand?
I guess I have a couple of top line observations and then one maybe thing that I haven't thought about that isn't, feel like it's getting underreported. Probably the biggest top line um, observation is that it doesn't solve any problems. It's it's
You're
a
depressing already.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't really do anything to address the biggest issue, which is the coming fiscal cliff.
Yeah.
And um, and then I sort of think my underreported, but here's positive, is that it does include funding for the Navy that the Navy probably really needs to sustain naval shipbuilding.
Mm.
So if I'm looking for an upside in the big beautiful bill, um, I mean I have other observations. Politically, it's smart for the Republicans to make the tax cuts permanent because it means that now Democrats would have to actually pass a bill to raise taxes in order to raise taxes rather
Yeah,
than
which is
like
what Democrats want to do. They just don't have the political courage to do it, but they
yeah.
want to do that.
I mean, nobody in Congress has the political courage to do much of anything
Touche.
involving political courage. So, um, but I mean, it's massive, and nobody's an expert on everything that's in that bill. So,
Right. Well,
uh,
and I do always think that kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I don't think you're a proponent of as I am, but safety and security. If you don't have that, you can blow off a lot of other things. If you don't feel safe in your home and your business or your country, then nothing else matters really. And so, really, I think national defense, Okay, cool. More money for national defense. You specifically point out Navy, great. Borrowing from our kids and our grandkids to do it, yeah, not as happy about that, but you've pointed that out. The other thing that disappoints me, though, is this a huge amount of money. I don't know if it's right or not, but I've seen reports saying that for the ICE Department of Immigration and whatever it is, they will have as much money as all the other federal law enforcement agencies, including prisons, combined.
Yeah,
But
I
you're
mean,
not solving the problem. You're not like helping DACA or any long term or any asylum things. That just means we're going to be doing mass deportations for the next 4 years. And I don't think that's solving anything. Do you?
right. This is, I mean, in a way, this is what I mean sometimes when I say that the parties are the same. Yeah, like this is the Trump version of Medicaid spending. We're not going to fix the problem. We're just going to pretend like throwing money at it is the same as solving it. I
Ah,
mean, and if you
yeah.
think about like one of the Democrats, I would say biggest branding problems is that people have started to realize that spending money on something is not the same thing as fixing it. You know, if you say I've got a big pothole out front of my house, and the government says we've spent $10 million on potholes, and you're like, well, but I still have a pothole in front of my house, and
Right.
you're like, well, we spent $1 million on that pothole. We gave $1 million to a 501(c)(3) to raise awareness of potholes, and you're like, I just need somebody to fix the pothole outside my house.
Or let
And
me go do it. And I have neighbors who've done that before. They go fix their own damn pothole.
right, and so in each one of these issues, Republicans are copying what the Democrats have done for years, which is confuse spending money on things with solving problems.
Okay, well, that is depressing. So let's get into a further depressing topic. Ready?
Yep,
Do we have to talk about Epstein at all? I know all the Trumpy and the anti-Trumpy and the conspiracy peer, all those people are at Twitter about this. Do we even need to mention it or do we not care?
I don't care.
Okay, neither do I. Okay, on to the topic at hand. Ready?
Yep.
You said, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and if we were a high produced show, if we were to throw a lot of money at this, I bet we could like pull the clip. You said during the course of some other part of the conversation, and it wasn't America, you said like we or if we survive, but it's America you were talking about. If we survive, and then you kept going, and I said, wait, what? And I'm really concerned about that. So this could be a 5 minute show, Professor. If we America survives, you mean like when we survive, or America will survive because, not if we survive. So that's the topic of the whole show.
Okay.
And I'd like you to put some historical elements into it. Clearly, the Civil War was a more tragic time in our nation's history than currently. And I don't think the 70s were. But maybe I mean, obviously the Revolutionary War when we started was a big deal, but I don't think any of the other Spanish War, the 1812, what? Tony, what do you want me to do? Oh,
He's
Nothing.
starting your remarks.
Nothing.
You're not
I
supposed to
was saying,
stop the show.
finally, you're getting to the
We're just
topic
supposed
at
to laugh
hand,
at
and are
that
you done
privately.
speaking?
Oh my
we are
God.
a profession. This is our like 130th show, and the producer introduced me with a personal thing. Okay,
No.
anyway,
I
Professor,
think it
back
was
at hand.
better when I didn't show up. I think I should
Oh.
stop showing up. So that's what
Professor, tell us about this. Go big picture, then I'm going to ask follow-up questions.
Okay. So I guess I'd begin with the premise of something that Ronald Reagan pointed out, which is that America is always one generation away from collapse, from failing. And this is because we are an ideological nation state, which means that the only thing we are is a set of ideas. And if those ideas go away, the United States goes away. And so every generation of the United States must be taught to value the rights of other people, because you have to be taught to do all the things that were so important to the founders, because those are all things that you have to be taught. They don't come naturally to human beings. And so um, if we were to design in a lab a way of destroying the United States of America, we would, if we were like Hollywood film directors, and we were trying to come up with a way to destroy the United States, we would probably, oh, I don't know, destroy the trust of institutions like the media. We would then destroy the credibility of educational institutions. And we would then make sure that those media and educational institutions um, had actually earned that distrust, that it wasn't just fake. And then to throw in something on top of that, I would then design a computer program that
Mhm.
would just distract people so that nobody would ever have time within their own brains to study things. And I would rob them of memory. And I would also rob them
Or
of.
how do you rob them of memory? What you lost me on that
Well,
one.
you don't create memories if all you're doing is scrolling. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
so
Okay.
you're not doing the things. You're not creating the new sort of neural pathways in your brain that are combining ideas with experiences that you would then put together uh, as a kind of civic understanding of the way the world should be. If you're being perpetually distracted. And then maybe on top of that, I would design something like uh, artificial intelligence and convince the nation's educators that learning was not important and that no one needed to do it anymore. And I would push this lie that no one needs to know anything anymore. The destruction of learning and the destruction of memory are ultimately really bad for an ideological nation state. uh, because, like I said, and as Ronald Reagan pointed out, and everybody has pointed this out, we're nothing but a set of ideas. And um, if no one believes in those ideas anymore, no one remembers those ideas anymore, and no one has memory, no one has a civic life, that would all lead to the destruction of the United States within a generation.
Okay.
So,
Let me
not to be,
interrupt
there
you.
you go. I'm a conspiracy theory, and I'm a
Yeah.
bummer.
Yeah. Well, let me interrupt you before we kind of get to that conclusion, which isn't your conclusion, but let me interrupt you. I love the ideological nation state. Everything about it, from the founding to the history of it. It seems like the more I read, the more I don't know. I mean, it's just so much knowledge to be pulled in on that topic of alone. Like, what do we believe in? What are our cultural values? What are our norms? And what's our what's in print? What's in writing about in the Federalist Papers? Except you can just go on and on and on and on. I love the idea. How many other ideological nation states are there in the world today? 180-ish countries. How many are there?
I don't know. It's because there are a lot of other successful countries that have kind of modeled themselves on us, but it like us,
Yes.
founded that way. Yeah, zero. I don't
Right.
know. Uh,
But there's a lot similar to us, Western Europe.
right, but their identities are often wrapped up in a, a, a
A
different
king.
country. Yeah, they're almost every other group of people on Earth are grew out of a security relationship built on family relationships. In other words, they started as families, clans, tribes, nations, and then nation states, and grew in that way, and then modified their nation state after it already existed.
Yeah,
And
and England is a great example, but so is France and so is Denmark. I mean,
so's every place
yeah,
except for the United States. Yeah.
yeah, the Emperor of Japan, the Tsar of Russia. Yeah, so, but what you're saying though is if America fails in our ideas, in our belief in upholding the values and protection of the other, not ourselves, not what's in it for my clan or my family, but what's in your, and not because we're friends, but some strangers' family, how to protect their rights. If we fail on that,
But I want to stop you right there because
please.
it's more precious than that. It's actually the true realization that in order to protect my rights, I have to protect yours.
Yeah, I love that.
So it's not necessarily that I'm not looking after my rights. It's that you have to be taught that in order to protect my rights, I have to protect yours.
Love this. Let me keep on the ideological nation state for a second more. If we fail in that idea that you're describing, we don't have a king to go back to. Because in England they could actually, the king, the family could say, hey, but we need to figure out a new parliament, or we need to figure out a new, I mean, there is kind of an institutional value of love to the queen. Is that what you're saying, or are they in trouble too if they don't have their ideas?
Well, I mean, I would say it doesn't even have to be real. It could be a trifling perceived tribal difference, that people will regress back to. I mean, um, it, people kill each other at football games over professional football players wearing
You're
different.
talking soccer.
No, I mean, there are fights that break out at American football games
Yeah, but they don't
because
kill each other over American
no,
football.
yeah,
You got to go
people
soccer.
die. People have died in violence between Raiders fans and Niners fans, or it happens.
I don't
Um,
remember. Anyway, back to your famous quote. You got to go on scale or percentage. It's so
right.
rare.
But my point is that where there is no difference, people will invent things. Madison said that.
Fair enough.
It doesn't even. I'm saying that it doesn't have to be real. Even what people will rally around and kill each other over.
Okay,
I'm
fair enough.
I'm just
So it doesn't even have to be religion. It can be made up stuff like, I don't know, race, or it could be just any crazy thing.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's not even self-interest, it's perceived self-interest, because in your actual self-interest would be for you to live a peaceful and successful life. And I that's how I would define self-interest. But you have to be taught that in order to pursue your actual self-interests, you have to care about the rules being followed.
Okay. Transitioning slightly, I decided to take the citizenship test. Not officially. I skimmed the citizenship test to
So if
see
you
if
fail, you don't get kicked out of the country.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and to see if I'd pass, and I did truly just skim it. So and I will go back at it again. My instinct says I'd probably get like a 94 out of 100, and I guess it's a verbal quiz, and they ask you 10 questions, and you have to get 6 or more right. Many of the questions, Professor, I don't know when the last time you've looked at it, but many of the questions are just factual. When was the founding of our country? How many states are there? I'm not positive both of those are questions, but I think they are. But like 60 or 70 of them are just simple questions, factual stuff, kind of like a multiplication chart. You just memorize it. The remaining 30 are more deep, but not the answer. The answer is you just memorize the answer that they want to give you. You don't have to give a paragraph. You just have to give them what's on the answer. How many branches of government are there, or what are checks and balances? And you just give them a 5-word answer, and you pass. If you give on some long speech from like law school, you might fail. It's better just to give them the short answer. So the whole thing is just rote memorization, in my opinion. I will be willing to change my mind after I take it. Does that make you an American? I mean, it does. If you pass the citizenship and you have the English equivalency and you meet all the other things and you swear to uphold the Constitution, all of a sudden now you're an American. Yeah.
Uh, well, I'd say that and believing it's true. I'm
Ah,
I'm of the
but how
uh,
do you prove that? How do you know what somebody really believes?
you can't. There's no way of. I
Right.
mean, you you spend your whole life trying to um, you know prove you are who you are.
I love that.
There's no. Um, I guess it's only after even after you're planted in the ground, people can argue about it. So.
Yeah, whether you're right or not, or whether you're lying, or yeah. Also, Professor, what I guess what I'm getting at, and by the way, we forgot to mention the other major thing that happened in the last week, and that is what regarding immigration. Pop quiz: can you pass current events?
I have no idea what you're talking
I'm
about.
sure you do. Class action suit. The
Oh yeah.
Supreme Court.
Yeah. Okay.
The Supreme Court said you can't do a nationwide injunction, and like, gosh, 4 days later, another court, a Bush appointee out of New Hampshire, said, "Yeah, we're class action suit. We're staying."
I just want to point out yet again something we said on this podcast so many times, which is you need to ignore almost all news coverage of the Supreme Court. Because if you listen to what we said
Yeah,
about the Supreme Court decision, we were right. You
yeah.
know, and and it in I did hear actually a good little summary. I meant to share this, but one of my friends, Josh Dunn, did a podcast where he did like a Supreme Court roundup, and I thought, okay, here's another thing here's another one I would endorse. Where he just went through um, I did kind of a roundup of the Supreme Court
The
term.
decisions of the last
Yeah,
session.
I'll share it on my Facebook page later.
Right.
But my point is that we said this isn't what people are saying it is, and of course the door is still open for many things. And as Doug, whose name is not Doug, pointed out in our chat, that it was not
Public,
about
right.
immigration and birthright citizenship. It was settling an entirely different question that, of course, made it possible for people to fix problems in other ways. Let's just leave it at that until we
Okay.
get to Doug, whose name is not Doug.
Oh my God. Okay, so we've talked about an ideological nation state. We've talked about a citizenship test. We've gone backwards a little bit on some really important topic of the day that hasn't been solved by the president or the legislature, but the courts are solving it. Birthright citizenship. Over time, they will solve that. So the system's working, isn't it, Professor? I mean,
Yeah.
like, why are you so? Why you're not scared? Yeah, I mean, okay. Let me interrupt you. Before you start, let me interrupt you.
All right.
My liberal friends, for years now, have been calling Trump a fascist, and where our country's dying, our democracy's over. We are we are crazy. We're in big trouble. Trump himself calls liberals communists instead of liberals, or even socialists, which some kind of are, but he calls them communist and evil for the country, and the death of we're if it wasn't for him, everything's like, so we're all these like melodramatic extreme statements and labels, and I can see why everybody's scared, because we've been listening to this for years, that, well, the death of the world, and all of a sudden it comes up 2 weeks ago, and you say, if we survive as a nation. What? Come on, Professor. Why are you finally joining in with all the extremists? We've done 121 shows where you've been rational and calm and patient, and let us see, and let's go back through history, and you given me a balm for my nervousness. Over 4 or 5 years we've been doing this, until 2 weeks ago, and you go, if we survive as a nation. Now talk about whatever you want to.
Well, I was thinking about how would I describe this? This phenomenon. It's like I often have to, every year, every semester, I have to teach anti-communism and McCarthyism. And these are two things that are happening simultaneously. One of the hardest things to communicate to people is that they all tend to believe that one thing is an extreme over here and one thing is an extreme over there, and somehow the truth is in the middle. And that's not true. It's never been true. That's not how the human experience works. Two things can be unrelated and true and false. So there were McCarthyites. There was a thing called McCarthyism, which was people, trying to gain political advantage by calling people communists who were not communists. But at the same time, there were actual communists in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to overthrow the government of the United States. Both of those things are true, and they were happening at the same time. So I will say this: Donald Trump is not a fascist. He's not smart enough to be a fascist. A fascist would have a coherent set of beliefs. Um, but calling your opponents communists, well, the new, standard bearer, presumptive mayor of New York is a communist. I mean, he says things that a communist would say and espouses beliefs that a communist would espouse. Uh, so you're not wrong to ascribe labels to people when they have earned that particular label. But as for why um, uh, why things might be different now, it's difficult to overstate, but it is being overstated. Here's what drives me nuts: what the Trump administration is doing with its border control policies, um, with its immigration enforcement policies right now, is really, really bad. And it's bad every day. And it's bad on a scale that, under normal circumstances, I would say it's difficult to overstate. And yet somehow we live in such a ridiculous like media and information sharing environment that people will lie and exaggerate, where the real power of this moment would come from just going out and telling the truth about what is happening, because there are enough outrageous true stories that it would be so much more powerful if the media would just tell the truth.
Well, not just media, though, people
The
too,
American
right?
people would be outraged. What's that?
It's not just media, it's people, individuals have
Yes.
a need to exaggerate when you don't
Yeah.
need to.
And then what happens is, because of the exaggeration, the other people, opponents, can make the argument about the exaggeration.
And then you're arguing about that.
Right. And then
Not
if you're a normal person, you're just going, oh, well, these people are saying this and these people are saying that, and I don't know who to believe, and so this outrageous behavior is continuing. And um, but the hard thing to understand is that not every aspect of the Trump administration is like this. But because he is such a bad administrator, um, really, really good people in one part of his administration and really, really bad people in another part of it's his administration, and both are, uh, doing whatever they want.
Okay, so Professor, you can keep going on this theme if you want, but my question was, why is America in trouble? And what you gave is a pretty detailed explanation on how bad immigration policy is under the Trump administration. We haven't reached that conclusion, like you haven't given an
Well, I guess,
example.
okay. So the deeper issue, why is America in
Yeah.
trouble, is because we, over the years, have been lucky enough to have presidents who could be shamed, and who had some innate sort of goodness within them, that if you pointed out something horrible that was going on in their administration, they would say, oh, that's terrible, I'm going to put an end to it. And because of that, we have given our executive branch tremendous leeway in terms of how they execute the laws of the United States. And that means that much of what Donald Trump is doing, and this is the part I feel like everybody's going to listen to this and hate me, but much of what he's doing is not illegal, but it's bad. Because they are using powers that the executive branch legitimately has, but in the dumbest, most evil possible way.
So, Professor, let me give you a specific example that you can probably correct me on. But it is, and I looked it up. I think it's 100 miles away from a border or an ocean, not 150. Could I be correct and you be wrong on that?
Yeah, I want to say it's 150, but we should
I
look it.
looked it up. I think it's 100, but okay. But it's a certain miles away from the a border or an ocean that the border patrol or ICE has tremendous authority to stop people, including U.S. citizens. Now,
Mhm.
you don't lose all your constitutional rights, but they do have the ability to stop you where they don't have it in Colorado. Correct?
Correct.
So what you're saying is when they're ordering a mandate to increase a quota to 3,000 a day. Within two-thirds of America, the population is within 100 miles of the border or ocean. Two-thirds of Americans live within that. It causes all sorts of stuff, not illegal, just bad to be going after people that have been here for 20 or 30 years and are law-abiding parents and
Well,
business.
let me give you an example that almost any American could relate to. Um, your local police could knock down your front door, storm your house, and search it, uh, and then say, "Oops, wrong address." You know, and it's there, and you would have some sort of you know legal
Or the Supreme
recourse
Court's lately
perhaps
a couple
to,
months.
yeah, but you never get those days back. and you're not going to get any sort of a financial settlement that is in any way satisfying. And what they did was not illegal, but it's bad. And you could say, oh well, he just made a mistake. But what if you staff your entire police department with morons or people who are illiterate and say no, go out and serve search warrants, right? Like you'd say, well, if we have a bunch of idiots who don't know how to read serving search warrants, then it is inevitable that they're going to mess this up. And what they're doing isn't illegal, but boy, is it bad. And how you should feel is that what's going on right now is that a bunch of people um, who haven't done anything wrong. Uh,
Except for coming into our country.
well, I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about people who are like harassed, detained. It feels like a kidnapping when it's
Yep. Hey,
happening.
John, could I ask a clarification question, John, on
Yeah,
this as
sure.
well?
Jump in.
This is an important issue to me, Stephen. So how is what they're doing not illegal? Just so I understand.
Because they're federal. Because the federal laws that they operate under are
Yep,
nothing like the civil law codes of your state.
of the state. So in this case, the federal overrides whatever the local state would be. Gotcha.
And be more specific, the Congress has written an act that authorizes Border Patrol Immigration Services to act in the ways they're acting, especially within the 100 miles. They have more authority there than they do in Colorado. It's by
Right.
law. Congress has given the executive that power.
So how do I know? Then this gets to that question again, Stephen and or John, both of you. How here I am. I'm at my front door. Somebody's identifying themselves as a federal agent, but has a mask over their face, has nothing that shows that to me. How do I know the difference between that individual and somebody who is uh,
Home
a
invader.
rapist or a killer?
Yeah.
Or I don't. I don't want to use those two. But just a guy in the neighborhood thought it'd be funny as shit to start harassing people. So that's my question, clarification wise.
You don't. And thus, we should expect that more horrible things are going to happen as a
Yeah.
result. I mean, I had a friend once who thought it would be a good idea to go and prank some friends who were camping with like a little mock, raid. And those people got so freaked out that they started responding with actual violence because they just thought, oh, the
Yeah.
locals are out to kill us or something. And, and that was just for fun, you know?
Right.
So I have no doubt that if it has not happened already, that it will be happening soon. That um, no, you have no idea. And the other thing
Okay.
that is happening, and Bart and not Doug, can probably weigh in on this, is that because no federal administration has ever done anything like this, that the legal tradition has dealt
There's no
almost
precedent, right?
exclusively with local and state police matters. So there just isn't the body of, not that there aren't, plenty of court cases in federal court, but it's nothing like how constrained our local police are.
Yeah. Well, and you know what I was thinking about was like, because we've had this conversation, the difference between liberal and right wing, left wing, and conservative. This seems like antithetical to what I would consider more conservative Republican interests, right? That the feds are overriding the states in doing this. Isn't that that's as anti-Republican as anything I've ever heard you represent, or anti-conservative? So,
Yeah, I mean, let me see. I'm trying to think if there is a conservative defense, um, for for this policy rightly administered, and it would be that because the states don't have the ability to secure the entire border,
yeah,
that it does rightly belong
to the
to
feds,
federal authorities.
right?
Um, but
I concur with that, by the way. I
yeah,
think it is a federal authority,
well, I mean, right.
but to Tony's point, I believe that the smallest level of government is the individual, and then the family unit, then the
Right,
neighborhood, and
right.
so I'm hesitant to have an overriding, all-powerful, point of the gun federal government coming in and monitoring my government, my
But,
home,
you,
my
this is such an important point, though, because um, our system is deliberately designed to prevent this. It's the
Yeah,
reason why your primary the laws that affect you the most are your state laws.
yeah,
And this is something that was designed by the founders on purpose, and not just designed by the founders on purpose. It was re-emphasized in the years after World War II. Because in the years after World War II, people were saying,
yeah,
well, because of atomic weapons and the rise of the Soviet Union, we need to have new institutions that can better secure the whole United States. And
right.
that led to and I mean, it's not like Harry Truman was some kind of a genius, but he was a good American, you know, and he surrounded himself with people who don't hate America. And they had a debate over how do we structure our national security state. And on purpose, they made sure to divide up international versus national in order to avoid having a national police force.
Right.
That's why, for instance, the 9/11 attacks happened because the wall of separation was so uh, hard to overcome,
Yeah.
uh, that people who dealt with national security issues outside the United States were not allowed to communicate even with people inside the United States. And that was done on purpose because one of the things that we recognized was that in other countries where you have a national police force, that dictators and would-be dictators, all they had to do was take over the national police force. And so
Yeah.
to my
Yeah.
friends who are really strongly, I mean, fearful of the Trump administration, when they point out, oh, this is what ICE is doing now. This has become a sort of de facto national police force without any check on its authority, and now it's going to expand. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to end up bad, but it's not good.
Well, it's one of the things that you talk about, Stephen, is that this republic only stands based on our maintaining the belief system, right? Like there is no structural. It's kind of ethereal almost, right? Like it's our, hey, this is our rights. These rights remain to be true even if they're not being enforced, or what
Not
have
quite,
you.
Tony. Not quite. The
How
way our
so?
the way our structure is done is it has a whole branch of government that is designed to see if the legislatures exceeded their constitutional authority, or to see if the
Sure.
executive has exceeded the legislative authority that Congress has given it. And obviously, the courts, led by the Supreme Court. So it's not just ethereal without anybody being able to put some structure behind it.
But
I'm
even
speaking more philosophically, John, I think,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Fair
Is
enough.
that even the Supreme Court is only supported by our belief in the Supreme Court. If a bunch of us got together and said, hell with this structure, we could and we
Don't.
actually represent the majority of people, not these officers,
Right.
not the Supreme Court. You know what I mean? If we really, and I'm not saying I'm not recommending going there. I just am saying, that
But
and
it's,
it's
and I would even say it's worse than that, because for almost 100 years, the Supreme Court didn't even believe that they had to follow the law. So,
yeah,
in a way, we're sort of lucky. We get incredibly lucky that our Supreme Court finally decides that they, need to follow the law, except for maybe
right.
one of them. But the fact that we have 8 out of the 9 who believe that the Supreme Court's supposed to enforce the law, that's I don't think that's ever happened in the history of the Supreme Court. Well, it's hard to say, but that last part's an overstatement. But we're incredibly lucky uh, that we're not having the events of today with the Supreme Court of 1890.
Go ahead and expand on that a sentence or two for novices like me.
Oh, um, the scientific rate. I mean, just big picture. The sort of first the political influence on the Supreme Court that took hold in the middle of the 19th century, and as that transitioned to um, scientific racism taking hold in the Supreme Court, and then having that further modified by progressivism and living constitutionalism in the late 19th, early 20th century, meant that the American legal system had a rough go of it for about 150 years, and that it became enough of a problem that in the 1970s and finally in the 1980s, there was a concerted effort to create a society called the Federalist Society that would really just push for one thing, and that's that you have to actually follow the law, and um, and it went from being student chapters in law schools to eventually um, becoming, I don't know that it's half of the law schools now or half of, but it's certainly a force within um, uh, the larger legal community now that you can't simply ignore. You can't.
So, Professor,
So even the liberal justices, like the two justices who I would call liberals, um, they both, when they disagree with a decision, they at least um, talk about the law when they're making their decision, instead of just saying, "Here's how I want this to end up."
I think
So
you said in a previous show, nod to Scalia, or Scalia is an overriding presence
really
still.
seems that way. Yeah.
Yeah, Professor. So, and by the way, the way you describe it is so matter of factual that everybody would agree. Yeah, but half of the country thinks that's the great evil that you just described, the new conservative court based off the federal. By the way, I concur with you, but half the country just thinks what you said, if they understood it, to be evil.
Well, I would just say, like, we're just going to keep being proven right, because in this last court term, and this has been true, I think, we look this up on SCOTUS blog, but if you go back and look at the most overturned um, circuit court, it's the Fifth Circuit, which is the most quote unquote conservative court in the United States, and they're the ones who the Supreme Court keeps overturning.
Interesting.
Um, the perception is almost exactly the opposite of the reality. And
Fascinating.
people,
Okay.
because it's reported as, oh, this is a big win for Trump. And then you're like, oh, what do you know? A bunch of class action lawsuits are going to be coming up soon. You're like, right, that's what we said.
Right.
you know.
So, Professor, before we let our two lawyers jump in, I hope they have some interesting
Well,
things.
they probably are going to disagree with everything we just
But
said.
I still need to tie this back to the beginning, though. We've talked a lot about immigration. Now we've talked about the courts. The topic at hand is America in trouble or not? Is America going to survive? And you're giving danger signals all over the place.
Okay.
So go back to that theme and give the yes, we're in trouble because of one, two, three, four, five. However, we're probably going to make it through because of one, two, three. Give it however you'd like. Tell us this state of the union.
Oh, oh boy. Well, if I'm being optimistic, here's what I would point out. Number one, um, that that our institutions have survived far worse. That if you go back and study any time period in the past, you will find that every time period in the past is a mixture of good people and bad people. Um, I don't know how to put it, doing their thing. I read about half of a book on Reconstruction on my last trip, and you just realize that every institution in every time you have some people who are motivated by ego, some people who are motivated by God in a good way, some people are motivated by God in a bad way, some people who are racist, and these people are all just, and how they got their jobs is you know some way, some of them got their jobs because they were good, and sometimes they were the best person for the job, but that's not very good either. I mean, the past is a complete mess also. So the fact that that things are a mess now is not necessarily an indication that that things are going to be a mess in the future, which maybe leads me to my second point, which is just how strong our institutions are. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't break eventually if we don't take care of them, but it is actually amazing when you go back and look at the challenges that the United States has faced in every era. I mean, there's not a single decade that you would want to go back and say, "Oh, let's go relive those problems again." If you realize, oh, well, it's actually been pretty bad at many times in the past, at most times in the past. And then, so our institutions have withstood terrible times. Now, it's different this time, and so you never want to say we know that it's going to work out and be okay in the future, but we've certainly had other times where things were bad. And then finally, I guess the other thing I place my great hope in is that there is something that just seems to be in the air that Americans breathe in, that no matter how cutesy you get, um, um, calling yourself a communist, or, saying how much you hate America, that if you get arrested overseas, the first thing that's going to come out of your mouth is, "You can't do this to me. I'm an American." Like there's some residual Americanness in our culture that we just can't escape.
So that de Tocqueville still rings strong in the heart of America.
Yeah, it's just that there's an innate sense of justice um, that we have, that when we see scenes like, or hear reporting, Kevin Williamson at the Dispatch had a long report on uh, the the activities of ICE in Los Angeles, and I recommend that everybody read it. Um, and that when we read that sort of thing, most, and I mean 90% of Americans will say, "Oh, that's wrong. That shouldn't be happening here in the United States." There's some, no matter how much you claim you hate America, right? There's some sort of innate sense of pride that says that can't happen here. This is America, and people are being treated this way. And even the most cynical left wing, atheist, communist, whatever, that kicks in, and you realize that's actually a form of patriotism. Uh, that they always tack on the end of this. This is wrong. That can't happen here in America. It's that can't happen here in America. That that little bit of patriotism is still in most of us.
Across the spectrum. So, Professor, you don't like the
I
it was a
reject the spectrum, by the way, remember?
I know. The grid. How about the grid? Or I get it. How about so 2 weeks ago when you said if America succeeds, you didn't really mean that. You were being rhetorical, or you were just chatting. You're truly not concerned about us. Where are you? I mean,
I mean,
aren't you reading?
I'm an educator, and my life is motivated by communicating the founding ideals to as many people as possible before uh, I'm put underground. And so when I say, I guess just the difference between me and a lot of other people is that I don't just say, "Oh, it's an ideological nation state," and think I'm, communicating a kind of fun fact that you're supposed to toy around with. Like I'm saying that's true,
Yeah.
and I'm acting accordingly. It's not just, it's not just something that appeared in a teacher's edition that I repeat to my students. Like, this is the way that human beings get to live in peace. And I'm not joking. I I'm acting as if that is true. So when you ask a question about, and I reply, well, if America survives, it's because, like, it's never far from my mind that our lives are a choice, and we can always choose to erase our memories, um, act in our perceived self-interest, even though it's not in our own self-interest, um, and and undo everything that was done for us. I mean, it can always that's always a possibility. So that's why I can't help it but throw those caveats out there every now and then.
Okay, so we've made it 249 years. We're going to make it 250. Right? We're going to make it within the next year. But you do have eyebrow raises that we have to stand up as citizens and learn more about our history and learn more what it means to be an American, what true patriotism is, and what our role in the world is, and how we need to be engaged locally and to make a difference in other people's lives and for our own. But we need to actually act. We can't just ponder along blindly and think we're going to make it as a country. So, medium term, you have some serious concerns.
Yeah, but I will always have serious concerns.
Right. But you're not attacking. Oh, here's a hardball question, and then we'll leave it at this and then go to our lawyers. Hardball question. You're not attacking liberals and Democrats at this recent concern. You're concerned with the Trump administration. Yes or no?
um, I would say I'm equally concerned about anyone who is um, um, destroying the fabric of American civilization.
Well, is that Gavin Newsom? Is it your
Yes, it
senator?
is.
Senate?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is also Gavin Newsom. And the fact that he's doing it with the fourth largest economy, we should be troubled by that. And
Fourth largest economy in
it
the
should never
world.
be far from our minds that one of the reasons why Donald Trump gets elected, as my friend Tom Racino has come up with so many of these little pithy things, but every time a new action would come out from the Democratic Party, every time they nominate, a communist to be the mayor of New York, I hear the words of Tom Racino ringing in my ears and saying, "Well, you must love Trump because this is how you get more Trump." you know and people who think that, like, they honestly, and this is the number one thing I wish that I could communicate to people who describe themselves as liberals or leftists or people who share whatever that, you know, conglomeration of ideas, reactionary ideas that there are now, uh, that uh, that that the reason why people voted for Trump is because they felt like they had no choice. That what was happening was so bad and was so egregious that they had to elect someone like him, if not him, you know. And so I don't want it to seem like I'm letting them off of the hook entirely, because they're the ones who made him. Uh, you know,
Right.
his support, he could only get 20% support. Between 15 and 20% of Americans would support Donald Trump. Uh, so how does he get to 50%? How does he get to 49.7 or whatever he got in the last election? He
8.
gets there by convincing another 30% of Americans that they have to vote for him.
That the other choice is so egregious that they just really have no option, so they're going to vote for Trump.
And
Yeah,
keep in
there's a
mind
lot.
that, like, Trump's
And
actual
by the
support is only about 10% higher than a crazy person. Yeah.
way, that's a cut quote. Did you say that again?
Trump's actual number of supporters is only about 10% higher than a crazy person.
That is such a funny cut quote. I'm not sure we want to use that. That is hilarious. You might get protests outside your house.
I just
Okay,
mean actual crazy people can get 10% of the
right,
vote.
right, or even more. Yeah, right. That's really interesting. Okay, I've taken too much of your time, and there's two very smart people that want to join in with Tony. So, Mr. Dugdale, not to use your last name, Mr. Dugdale, sorry. But one of the reasons we're doing this show is because of you, Jeff. Um, you have some real concerns about America, and whether we're going to make it or not. And I don't want to put you on the spot, which I am.
He lives in Southern California also.
He does. But you have some concerns about the knowledge and passion about the American citizen, whether we can be trusted with a constitutional republic. Now, those are my words, not yours. Jeff, jump in and ask a question of the professor.
So usually I don't have a question. This time I do, which is fortunate for me. But I'll start with kind of reiterating something that the professor said. That he said it very eloquently, but it's the way that I've consoled the people around me that are distraught. And in essence, it's the old adage, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think the Trump administration is finding the loopholes. They're finding the cracks in the armor, and they're taking advantage of them. And if we survive, it's because we figure out how to make the system more resilient so that it can heal itself, so that it can resolve, so that we're not relying on people just doing what others have done before and having decorum and respecting, you know, the dignity of the office that they're given. So that sort of leads me to my original question, and I go back all the way to the beginning, Professor, where you said, you know, each person has to be taught that in order for them to be able to have their rights respected, they need to know how to respect the rights of others. And so I wonder if you can give a historical perspective about how we did that in, let's say, the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe, and how we're teaching people to respect other people's rights today. And then if you prefer, you can suggest how we need to do it differently, because it's obviously not working, whatever we're doing right now. Should we go back to the 50s, or do we need to do something different?
Well, one of the long-term themes of this podcast is that the easiest way to lie and the most effective way to lie is to tell the truth out of context. And what has happened since the late 60s and really began in earnest in the mid 70s is not so much that people have lied about the past, but what they have done is they have crowded out the larger truth of the past. which is to say, um, yes, bad things have happened in American history. Many horrible things have happened in American history. But you can teach the history of slavery because slavery happened, right? You can say uh, um, that slavery happened in the United States, and that's the story of the United States. That's all you need to know is that America is evil because slavery existed in the United States. Or you could say the American founders had a real revolution, and that revolution was to rid the world of unearned privilege and aristocracy. And they put into place a moral framework for people to argue that slavery was wrong. And this moral framework was ultimately um, what ended slavery in the United States and helped to condemn it uh, everywhere in the world. So you can tell this story as if slavery existed in the United States, therefore you don't have anything to learn from the history of the United States. Or you can tell this story as we need to learn about the ideas that helped to end slavery. And the story of the bad things that have happened in American history have so overwhelmed the larger, significant story of America that now I think most students know that if you want a good grade on an essay, all you have to do is pick the answer that makes America look the worst if it's a multiple choice. And in an essay, just write about how much you hate America. And if you want a job teaching history, just go into your job interview and talk about how much you hate America, and you're going to get the job. You know, in other words, if you would like to teach the larger true story of America in perspective, you're not going to get hired. You're not going to get promoted. You're not. You're going to be fighting your whole career. That's bad.
Professor,
So,
how blind do you think, not you, you may be blind in some ways, but people like you, how blind are you to the other side of the argument? Because every time you give a nice little treatise like this, which by the way it really is an interesting treatise, and I like it. You've educated me over the years, where I think you're right, but I still have enough of and I've never hated America. I've always loved America, still do, always did, still do, will continue to. Um, but I'm just seeing all my friends, and I've got a bunch of them. They're going, "Oh my God, that guy is clueless. He just thinks that you just can whitewash over this founders having slaves, and they were setting up this neat little document that eventually disbanded. No, they were slave owners. I can just see them like screaming at this, And so, You're not oblivious to that criticism. They live in a world or a bubble. Do you live in a bubble too, that you can't see their side?
I mean, I get it would be very difficult for me to not see their side since it's what I've been living in and for 30 years. So I
Yeah,
feel
fair
like
enough.
I'm probably more familiar with their side than anybody on the outside would ever be, right? It's my entire professional life has been swimming in that world.
Including your friends, true friends that are professors that believe that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
And
you're not able to persuade them, though.
no, but again, let me quote another good Tom Brasino line from years ago when he said, if you want to know if somebody loves America, ask them. And if it
Yeah.
takes them more than 10 seconds, the answer is no. Like, so you just have to say, like, if I were to go, to convocation and just go around and ask, everybody in the English department, do you love America? None of them would answer in under 10 seconds. And none of them would start with yes. You know,
It occurs to me,
Jump in,
I
Jeff.
shouldn't say none, but
you,
it would be three. You know,
you gave two polar ends, and as I was thinking about it, both are true. And the history of America isn't so easily put into one bucket or the other. It is true that some people felt that way. It is also true that, and that's the case today. It's true that some people really believe in everything Trump does, and some people really hate everything he does. But the truth and reality for the rest of us is that it's somewhere in the middle. Some things that the administration does are good. Some things are good but done very poorly, and some things are really shouldn't be done.
but you know, this is what is missing is context. You know, it's the context which makes one thing true and the other thing false. Um, Getting people to understand that not everything is a fact or an opinion, but
Yeah.
that uh, that that no, there's an analysis that says the significant thing about the United States and the thing to study is not all the times when the United States acted like every other human being, like every other country. The thing that you study is what made us different. Does that make sense?
Which goes back to the other part of my question. What should we be doing now to teach people about respecting other people's rights?
Well, I would say just stop. And this goes not just for history, but it goes for all subjects. And this is what I think one of the things about homeschooling it allows to correct for this in a way that the public school system doesn't, is that the essentials of education are just getting completely crowded out. That you know, you can't simply say, as they've done in California, every student must take ethnic studies now and expect that that won't have an effect on your child's education, because what ends up happening is they have to cut other stuff out. And the more that you replace education with anti-American indoctrination of in whatever in every class, uh, every one of those things is that's minutes that you're taking away from somebody learning how to read, write, do math, or understand Federalist One. You know,
So,
because
Professor, let
understanding
me interrupt
Federalist
you.
One takes an hour.
Let me interrupt you. Jeff and I had a beer last week together, which is a noble thing to do once in a while. By the way, I strongly encourage everybody to do that.
In what
Um,
state were you?
what?
Were you in California or Colorado?
No, he was in Colorado. So in fact, I think I bought. Well, actually, he did, but I bought the pizza. All right, Jeff.
As long as
Remind
you're
me.
keeping track like a real friend.
Right. Um, I took one of those fluff courses, professor, at the University of Denver. I don't know why I took it, but I actually loved it. It was called Feminism in the Law. And I was a conservative and told them all, and they were all liberals and socialists and feminists. And I had a delightful time with it. I seriously, it was a great course because it exposed me to things that I would never, ever consider being exposed to before. It just so happens that Jeff, I think, had the same professor at the University of Denver 10 years after I went to law school there. And Jeff, you liked the course too, right? But that was a fluff course, right? Wasn't it? Or was it not? Why'd you
No,
take it?
I remember I didn't take that class. I took a class from the same professor, I believe, that was called History of American Law. But
Okay.
but what I told you was all she taught was the role of women in the history of
Okay.
American law. But
Okay.
I guess I want to make one more comment, and then I want to make sure Bart and Sandon have time. And
Well done.
um, we can't just ignore the mistakes we made. And so teaching ethnic studies shouldn't be about this is how horrible we are, but it should be about this is how horrible we've been, and we ought not to do that again. And that ties right back into your point that that's how you teach people to respect other people's rights. What do you think about that position?
Well, we talked about Maslow's hierarchy, but there's also Bloom's taxonomy, and everybody wants to skip it. You know, nobody wants to. This is why nobody's learning how to read anymore. You know, because everybody wants to skip to the part where that we're all having fun discussing books, but you actually have to teach people how to read first. You know, and you must go through the steps. I sometimes tell my students, we're learning the box in this class. You're not allowed to think outside the box until after you demonstrate that you've learned the box. You know, that and what we have now in at least history, but not in every subject, but at least in history, is we've had nothing but outside the box thinking for 40 years. And nobody remembers how we built the box. All we remember is how to criticize the box. And, you know, boxes are still useful, if you catch my metaphor here. But
And the whole thing is a metaphor from
So
history and
it's-
politics, isn't it? Or our societal.
yeah, but you don't get to skip the phase where you learn, like, you don't get to criticize Federalist One until after you've read it.
Yeah, so in essence, you're not saying these things shouldn't be taught. You're saying they're being taught too early before critical thinking skills have developed.
Well, it's not even critical. Like, forget all of that stuff. Like, yeah, I took all those classes too, but you take them after you know things. After you have to learn the thing, and then you learn the criticism of the thing. But we're not. But the criticism has overwhelmed the thing, so that nobody even knows what they're supposed to be defending, and all you end up with is this bizarre echo chamber where you just know that the right answer is always destroy the box. Like, and that can't be the core of your civic education, is destroy America, you know. And it really is. So of course that's going to be frustrating, but you know, Bloom, again, it does seem to be happening the worst in the humanities and social sciences.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting stuff, Professor. Thank you for adding that in. And you're going to get a couple bites at the apple here in 5 or 10 minutes after we hear from Sandon and Bart to give us all some sense of where we are as a country. Bart or Sandon, jump in if you'd like. Bart.
Here, John, I'm unmuting and putting my video on at the same time. It's kind of like that thing of holding two truths, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I'm having trouble doing two things at the same time. Okay. I think this dialogue has been great. And, you know, one of the things that, well, number one, Jeff made a prediction last week on the birthright citizenship stuff, that it was going to come back very fast. And I think Jeff was absolutely right.
That was Jeff?
Yeah.
What was that, John?
I think it was me, but you think that was Jeff, huh?
Well, I don't know. It was one of you.
We're going to have to pull the tape.
Well, you both ended up being right, and it was 4 days.
Yeah, 4 exact days. And we'll see what happens this time. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes. And, you know, this, I think, relates to the conversation you guys were just having about learning in a way. Not learning like, oh, the Supreme Court needs to learn. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that one of the things I was taught about law in law school is that you do need to know what the law is at any given moment. You got to know what the Constitution says. You need to know what the state constitution says. You need to know what the statutes say. And you need to know what judges have decided under all of that. I find it interesting now that, well, I don't find it interesting. I'm kind of finding it troubling, okay?
Look, can I finish your sentence? That a lot of people are saying, or you don't.
Right, yeah, or you don't. What I'm finding the most troubling is that people are actually trying to argue that things don't say what they clearly say.
Right.
And I think that's a problem. I don't know what to do about it other than to keep talking about it. You know, and I don't know how you feel about that, Stephen, but I'm concerned because we have a Supreme Court that last year in 2024 decided that the equal protection clause's insurrection wording basically isn't there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't mean anything. I don't trust them to do the right thing on birthright citizenship. Now, having said that, I'm very troubled by the fact that I feel that way because I don't know, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the country.
Yeah.
But I'm very concerned that they're going to come down with an opinion that says that birthright citizenship doesn't mean that. And it's really a problem. This is not good.
I'm less concerned about that, but it feels like I've been talking about Tom Racino a lot. And during the after 9/11, one of the things that we would sometimes say is that we would hear other academics say things, and I would often feel like I would be looking for the hidden camera somewhere. Like, did you just say that you're siding with Al Qaeda? Like after, and this wasn't even, in 2003, you're like, did you what? And you'd kind of say, is there some sort of camera on me to see how I'm going to react when you say something completely absurd? And then you realize, no, I'm in a room full of academics, and they're all nodding and stroking their chins, and I'm just like, this is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? This doesn't even. You're making an argument that's so absurd that I don't even know, like, if a logical argument would even make sense. And this is something that Jonah Goldberg has said recently about politics. Like, I don't even know what the point of being a commentator is anymore, because arguments don't matter. Words don't matter. Everyone is reasoning from a premise. And how can you exist in that environment? You can't even make progress in that environment. But I do have a question for you, Bart, which is, when I was describing sort of the distinction between, and I guess this would be a question for Doug also. Did you guys have any issues with how I was describing the distinctions between federal and state law? Did I make any mistakes, or do I require any modification of my description there?
I don't believe so. You were accurately describing kind of how our federal system works. And yeah, you can talk, there are nuances, of course, to all of that stuff. But I think in the way you were describing it is correct.
Okay. Jeff, did you want another swing at the
I actually I messaged Bart on the side when you said, that when a federal officer breaks down your door, they haven't done anything illegal. And I guess I'm struggling with whether something that they do that is, for example, unconstitutional. So like when a federal officer pulls you over, pulls you out of your car, puts handcuffs on you and throws you in jail, and they don't have reasonable suspicion, say nothing about due process. Have they done something illegal? It's clearly unconstitutional. Could you sue? Yes, people have sued and people have recovered damages. I agree with your point that whatever recovery you get out of the federal government is inadequate. And there are lots of doctrines that prevent the federal government's overreach from truly hurting you, things like the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. But I guess I don't have a good answer of whether that's actually illegal to violate the Constitution. You're protected from the outcome of that illegality or that unconstitutionality, but I don't know whether it's actually illegal. Did they break the law?
Yeah, and I would agree with what Jeff just said. I don't know that I don't know that you can say it's legal or illegal. It might be wrong, but Stephen, I think the point you were making was that basically Well, what you were
But if you
saying
do
is,
here's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Here's the problem.
go
You have a
ahead.
bunch of people who are saying, I'm going to do a bunch of wrong things and then challenge everybody to stop me. And
Right.
then because we follow the rules, we have to be the ones to follow the rules in how we stop you. But it's our system is not really set up for to deal with a bunch of people who actually don't care about the law.
Those are the cracks in the armor that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what we have to, that's really what we're dealing with, I think, as a society right now,
Yeah.
is how much, and I think you were exactly right, Stephen, as well as Jeff earlier, when you said that, Trump got elected because people were just fed up that nobody was solving these problems. And there's an aspect of that with like even the immigration laws, and I know Tony got off, but the reality is I think people were as ticked as hell that the immigration laws were not being enforced.
Yeah.
Well, now that somebody's enforcing them, we may not like the way they're being enforced, but
yeah. But and what I find bizarre is that I'm still not hearing anything other than what we want is for the law not to be enforced. So you've got one side of the argument saying we don't care about the enforcement of the law. And the argument from the other side is we don't want the law enforced either. And I'm just sitting here going like, you guys, a pox on both of you. What this is, you're actually both advocating for the same legal principle, which is none.
Mm-hmm.
Or anarchy.
Yeah. It's almost like the horseshoe theory that everybody talks about.
Yeah, except for I hate the horseshoe theory because that again implies a spectrum. When
Right.
I want to just say this is the same.
Yeah.
So because there's no dip and it's just like you're saying that this is lawless and you're saying that this is lawless. So I'm going to circle around you two and here's my graphic for you. Everyone who believes in lawlessness goes in this circle. And that includes right now Republicans and Democrats. Like,
yeah, fascinating. Okay, we were almost out of time and we didn't give Sandon a chance to ask a question or make a comment. Sandon, you don't have to, but now's your quick opportunity.
No comment. Thank you, gentlemen. Just trying to learn.
excellent.
That's it?
That's it.
Noble.
Wow.
I love that. Well done. I'm trying to learn as well, Sandon. Thank you. And by the way, if you were to ask a question, my only retort would be, gosh, you're smarter than I am. So I get it. So thanks for that.
I do have
That's always your retort, John.
Yeah.
It is. Well, and it's true.
For our next show, I want to call Jeff Dale.
Stop it. Everyone stop it.
His name is
I make a weird faux pas and it's going to be in the history book. Stop it. Okay,
No.
Professor, conclude this. The entire show is if America is to survive, it will be because. Finish that statement for us to ponder in coming weeks.
I don't know. Put down TikTok, teach the basics, and don't be lawless.
Love that. I'm going to add in. Sorry to add in. Just look to our founding documents. Our system is designed for this. Checks and balances, 3 levels of government, 3 branches of government, federalism, the 10th Amendment, reserved to the states or to the people. There's lots of things that we as citizens, you don't have to know all the details. You don't have to memorize the Constitution. You just intuitively try to do the right thing by just not acting with violence or threats of power. It's the golden rule, Professor. I mean, there's lots of things that can keep our system working if we just go back to what would a good person do? We can survive this if we're good people.
I certainly hope so. I would say, and go on the teachingamericanhistory.org website.
There you go.
And read Federalist 1 and start there.
Okay. All right. We're going to end with that today, Professor. Thanks for your time, gentlemen. Shannon, go get your law degree. Everybody else seems to be a lawyer. Either get a history degree or a law degree. No more MBAs. All right. Have a great day, you all. Thank you.
See ya.